What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Speaking Sessions podcast. I've got Michael Byars here. He's the owner of Acquisition CEO, is a business acquisition specialist, and teaches on how to buy businesses with no money down. And today we're going to speak about the art of negotiations, because believe it or not, a lot of people don't understand how to negotiate with really anything in their life. But we're going to talk about business acquisition and all sorts of other negotiations within the business realm. But Michael, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
I'm great, Philip. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you allowing me to be on your podcast.
Of course. I know we had to reschedule a couple of times, but had to get you on because you've got an incredible story when it comes to your business. So give us a little bit of a rundown, because I remember when I first met you, you're like, I've owned this business. And there were like 50 businesses later. You're super humble overall, and somebody that could be very arrogant because of the success that they've done so far. I know you'll be like, well, I'm not successful yet. But the things that you've done has been pretty incredible to be able to acquire these different companies in different areas that really kind of filter back to helping each individual company in their own way. So give us a little rundown on your business history background, and of course you personally as well.
For sure. So, I grew up in a small little town, not much going on there. Went off to Clemson for college, stayed there for about a year and a half, and I'd had all that torture I could take. While I was there, I'd started a tech company that ended up doing very well. And, as I was generating revenue through the tech company, I was looking for a place to put it. So I started buying some single family homes. I got about 180 single family homes now. But when I started buying those homes, I seen different opportunities around. So I bought a construction company. I bought a rehab company. I bought a forestry mulching company, plumbing company, a heating and air company, a property management company. I bought a lot of stuff that surrounded that, so I could vertically integrate in that real estate business. Now, like you were talking about, I really manage all aspects of that stuff. And then, as I started doing that, I was buying other companies to grow my tech company. I started it very small. I bought 5 or 6 other tech companies to buy the technology, or to buy the employees, or to buy the accounts that they had. Just different reasons for me to buy different companies in that sector. And I like that sector. But, as I went along, I ended up, buying weirdo stuff. I like boring, profitable businesses. And for me, I bought a coffee chain in Wisconsin. I've got a partner up there. But I don't even drink coffee, man. So, I bought, like I said, I just bought a ton of different stuff. I bought 5 companies this year. So at the end of the day, it's all about the thrill of the chase. I enjoy doing good business with good people. And, other people like to, go hiking for a hobby. I like to do due diligence and buy companies, right? So.
Man, not many people say they like to do their due diligence.
No doubt.
You definitely don't hear that often, but that's awesome. And I can definitely tell the way every conversation we've had, it's always been very systematic. And of course, it always gets into business, and we're able to talk through several different things very quickly and from a high level perspective, which is really cool to see there. But when we talk about negotiations, and you mentioned due diligence there, it's definitely something that I think a lot of us struggle with. Something sounds really cool. I would say something like Amazon automations, or even business acquisition right now. Those are really hot things that people are doing, or arbitrage. I was one of those that was guilty, got into that with a cryptocurrency, and I probably lost at least $10,000. I feel stupid to this day still doing that, because it sounded cool. Like, you can make a partial percentage off of this. Like, it sounds great. I didn't do my due diligence though. So what are some tactics that you do when it comes to, before getting to the negotiation table, doing that due diligence and making sure like all of these things actually are what they seem to be from the very beginning?
Number one, you say you felt stupid with the crypto stuff. No risk, no reward, man. So don't feel dumb. You took a chance. If every one of them was a winner, life would get boring. You got to
Yeah.
have some losers tossed in there to remind you, where you're at. Right. So, but, for me, you talk about negotiation and due diligence. For me, any kind of transaction is, in order for someone to do the transaction, they have to have a problem. And in order for them to do the transaction with you, you have to be the best fit to solve that problem. Does that make sense? All right. So, for me, I want to understand what the problem is. Are they burnt out? Are they tired? Do they have some sort of health issue? Do they just want to move to Florida and hang out with their kids if they're older? Have they went through a divorce? Are they going through legal proceedings? What is the deal, and what is the catalyst to make these folks want to decide to sell this business now? I'm sure in the past they may or may not have thought about selling. They may or may not have had people approach them in the past. While I'm there, I want to know what the problem is. And, I either want to figure out, am I a good fit or am I not a good fit? And I want to figure that out quick. I don't want to waste their time, but I sure don't want to waste mine either. Right. So, for me, it's all about, can I solve this person's problem? If the answer to that is yes, do I want to try to solve this person's problem? Because some of these folks, problems are bigger than what I want to try to take on, right? Especially if they got legal proceedings or what have you. For me, like I told you earlier, I'm looking to do good business with good people. I want lifelong friends, and I want, when I buy their company, if they're going to go off and do something else, I want to buy that company too. If they're a good person and they've built a good company, I'm a buyer for life. If they build something else that's great, perfect. Sign me up. When you get ready to sell that, call me first,
Yeah.
And, I would say 98% of the people that I've bought something from, I'm still friends with to this day. Some of them have moved off, but, that's what I'm looking for, man. I'm looking for, I want to buy a good business, but I also want to, I'm buying a network too. You got customers, and they have to be, in order to have good customer base, they got to be good people. So when I do the due diligence, I'm digging into the business, but I'm also digging into them as a person. What kind of person is this guy? Is this guy just, arrogant piece of trash, or is he a good guy? Is what he has built, is it good? Does it have legs? All these things, I'm looking at his customers. How is he able to acquire these customers? Are the customers going to leave when he leaves or she leaves? I'm looking at all these things, but that relationship with me and them, and with them and the customer, is what really, that's what I'm going to spend a lot of time on.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense there with looking at the customer and everything. I remember hearing Andy Frizzell on his podcast talk about one time when he started his supplement superstores is the name of them, and he went to another retail location. And he's like, "Oh man, this is gonna be great. It's already an existing location," and he bought them out and then made it supplement superstore instead of whatever X supplement store. And he's like, "Oh, this is gonna be great. It's gonna run." And it did terrible. And eventually he ended up closing down that location because of the reputation of that previous supplement store and everything. And so it's amazing what the reputation of somebody or some business can do, no matter who the new management is. And we see this all the time with restaurants too. Oh, under new management, and it's on their little sign out front. Like, really? And it takes a long time to overcome that. So if you're trying to acquire a business, do you really have that kind of time that maybe you put a couple 100,000, a couple million, tens of millions of dollars into acquiring it? Do you really have that much time to wait for it to get better? And so, yeah, that is part of that due diligence. And I like as well that you mentioned, hey, can you solve the problem? Yes. Okay. Do you want to solve the problem? If they're in this huge lawsuit, I probably don't want to go in and solve that problem.
Nope.
Now, if they've got a money issue, I mean, depending on how bad the money issue is, maybe I do want to go in and solve that. Maybe I don't. So I like that you have that caveat there, that second rule, that do I want to solve the problem? I guess I think we don't think about that. We think just about, oh, can I solve it? Or do I just want to buy a company? And that's what we focus on first.
Yeah. I mean, when I'm looking at these acquisitions, I'm buying their good track record. If it's no good, I'm not going to touch it, man, because, you hear these people say, oh, this is a once in a lifetime deal. I see one of them a month. So once in a lifetime deal means nothing, you know. I mean, it's just, you got to understand that if you're looking for deals will come your way. I get 30 to 50 DMs or text messages a week with people looking to sell something, people looking to buy something, people looking for help in stuff like that. Man, I mean, deal flow is not the problem. You know, doing the due diligence, finding good people, you know, that's where it's at. And, you know, right back to a lot of stuff that you talk about speaking, you know, as these people are talking and as they're talking to the customers, you know, the more you can solve the customer's problem, the better off you're going to be, you know, because people will pay to have their problems solved. And as people come to you as a customer, they're looking, all they care about, especially if they don't know you, is can you solve their problem? And if you can, they're going to spend their money with you. If you can't, they're going to go spend their money with someone else. But they have this problem and they're looking to have it solved. So, you know, the real question is, you know, can you, number one? Do you want to, number two?
Yeah, yeah, and I gotta correct you. Even though I haven't acquired businesses, I think a lot of these probably are once in a lifetime opportunities for them, not for you.
Right, but I mean, I was talking about, like, you know, for deal flow. You know,
Oh yeah, I know. I just give you a hard time.
For them, yeah, you're correct. You know, they've built. You know, these companies are their babies, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've built them for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years sometimes. You know, this is all they know. They got their blood, sweat, and tears poured into it. And you're right, it is a once in a lifetime opportunity, because a lot of stuff that I'm buying is from older folks. They got one shot to sell it. And they want to make sure that whoever buys it is the right fit too. They're doing just as much due diligence on me as I am on them, because they want to make sure that I'm the right person for the job. They want to make sure I'm going to take care of what they've built. They want to make sure I'm going to take care of their employees. And that's huge. Just think about it. If you had something for 20 or 30 years, all your employees are like family at that point. You know, you want to make sure that whoever comes in, whoever you pass the torch to, is going to take care of that family environment you built.
Yeah, I agree there. And so when it comes to like these negotiations, like how does that start out? Obviously, you find this deal, whether it be through a DM or you happen to be doing some search or whatever that looks like. But now, once you've gotten in touch with this business owner, let's start with there. Like, how do you get in touch with that business owner to express, like, hey, I'm interested in possibly acquiring your business?
You know, it depends on if they've got a broker or not. If they have a broker, you know, I'll contact the broker, try to get the information. They'll normally send over a NDA you have to sign, and then a CIM, which is a confidential information memorandum, which is kind of like a binder, for lack of better terms. It has all the information on the business. If they don't have a broker, if it's an off-market deal, or it's just somebody that comes to me and says, hey, I'd like to sell this business, can you help me, or are you interested? You know, I'm always going to, I've got a checklist of what I go down, of what I need. You know, I'm going to need their tax returns. I'm going to need their P&Ls. I'm going to need their balance sheet, all that type stuff. But, you know, in order to get a negotiation, it goes right back to the same stuff we were just talking about. What is their problem? Because that's what I got to figure out first. You know, if their problem is this thing's headed for a cliff, and you know, maybe they sell soda and the FDA is about to outlaw sodas, right? It's my job to find that out.
Yeah.
You know, or who knows, maybe they sell corona tests and coronavirus is over, right? So, you know, my job is to talk to them enough to figure out what's their motivation for selling. Why are they selling? What problem do they have? Yeah. Can I solve it? Do I want to solve it?
I like that. It seems like a lot of fact finding within there.
It
So
is.
yeah, so you have that checklist and everything, which, I mean, first of all, how did you come up with that? Is that just something you came up over time? Like you started asking these same things, or how did you come about this checklist?
A lot of mistakes, man. A lot of mistakes. You know, I make mistakes. I learn from them. I write it down. I'm super big about carrying a pen and a piece of paper with me everywhere I go, like a notebook. So, you know, I'm always writing notes, always, you know, trying to, you know, if I have a problem, I want to be able to reference back through some of the stuff that I've written down. You know, and I always want to learn from my mistakes, because I've made a lot of them, man. I mean, a lot. You know, I've bought businesses that have failed. I've changed the way that I've done things after that. I haven't bought anything that's failed in the last probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 years, but I have bought stuff that's failed. But it's because I didn't do correct due diligence. I didn't go on the fact finding mission. I didn't research the person instead of researching the business. Business is not all about numbers. A lot of it's about numbers, but you're dealing with humans also. So you got to figure out who they are and who, the employees are really.
Yeah. And that's a great point you bring up there. We think about business and we say, oh, business is business. It's just the numbers. But when you get into the business and when you're running your own business, really it's the people that really can make or break that business, and more specifically probably leadership, even you as a business owner, that can make or break people wanting to work there, people working hard, things happening. So how much of your time is spent on like the P&Ls and all of the business statements versus looking at the people?
Well, I have an in-house CPA and some accountants. So not as much as if I was like a one-man show, right? Mm-hmm. But for me, I'm going to spend, my guys do a real good job, right? So I'm going to spend 5 or 10% of my time going over the numbers, and I'm going to spend 90% of the time, talking to my people, my employees, my partners. I want to find out. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to find the smartest person for that job, and I want to go back and conference with them. I've got to let them, have free reign. If not, there's no use. I can go down to the staffing agency and hire a $12 an hour employee if all I'm going to do is tell everybody here what to do, right? It's a collaborative effort all the time. And, I'm all the time running, and each business I normally have has a quarterback. I'm all the time running ideas by the quarterback, but at the end of the day, it's their job to make that decision and do it, the way they would do it, because I hired them for a reason, because I felt that they were better than I am at whatever business that is.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense there. And so when it comes to, communicating with these people, and probably more the business owner has to talk with the staff as you're in the talks of acquiring the company, but what does that communication kind of look like? Is there anything that you're involved in on your side, or is that pretty much the business owner is kind of taking care of the staff and making sure they're not all just jumping ship because who knows what's happening here, kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be on the business owner, not on me, because a lot of times the business owner won't want the staff to know that they're making a transition or they're selling. Mm-hmm. We're going to want to talk to the key employees, and I'm going to want to talk to, the managers or any of that stuff. But, the day-to-day, your day-to-day employees, that's going to be on the current owner or the seller to go through and talk to them either, right before the deal happens or right after it happens.
Okay. And then what are like some good questions? Maybe we're getting into negotiations. What are some good questions that we could potentially ask these different levels of leadership or people within these companies to make sure we're doing some of that due diligence within the negotiations?
I'm going to want to know if they're going to stay, especially if they're management quality material. I want to have a conversation about that. I want to see, number one, what do they like about what's going on? But number two, what do they not like about what's going on? And the things that they don't like about what's going on, I got to figure out if that's, if they have 3 members of management and they all 3 don't like the same thing, well, is that a business problem or is that an owner problem? Right? If I could come in there and change those things and everybody's happy now, what does that change? Or is it something that I can't change and he can't change, and that's why the problem still exists? I'm trying to figure out, right back to the same thing. What's the problem? Can I solve it? Do I want to try to solve it? If the answer is no, I can't solve the problem. Maybe I don't know. Maybe their truck is blue and it needs to be green, right? I can solve that problem. But, if if they're driving a truck and they want a free airplane, I mean, that might not be a problem I can solve for them, right? So you got to figure out, yeah. And you got to figure out, or if it's one of those things that they're overworked and they need another employee, I can solve that. But if they're mad because Bobby got a promotion and they didn't get one, and everybody hates Bobby, I got to figure out. There's just so many nuances there, right? I got to figure out if I want to let Bobby go, or if I want to try to smooth over the water from all the ripples that Bobby's made. Maybe Bobby is the only person there selling anything, or the person that owns a patent to whatever it is I'm buying. Maybe you can't get rid of Bobby, but maybe Bobby is the problem. At times, times I'll take on that challenge. Other times, it's just, I got to move on, right? You got to, it all goes back to finding what everybody's problem is. And, can you fix it? Do you want to fix it?
Yeah, I like that. Again, that system, the same things, what's the problem? Can you fix it? Do you want to fix it? So important, really, in any aspect of life that we go into, if we're about to go into some new endeavor, for sure. And so with the negotiation table, what does that kind of look like? And how are y'all going back and forth? Because I can imagine, I mean, obviously the NDA is going to come up. Are pretty obvious. Most people, if they know anything, they're going to hear sign this NDA, which obviously isn't that big of a deal. I mean, obviously you want to make sure you read it, because they could have some crazy, stupid stuff in there that, you can look at this, but then you can never do any kind of business again or whatever. Yeah, I'm sure I wouldn't say something like that, but it could say something crazy. But once you get past the NDA, how do those negotiations start to look, and how are you going about making sure that they favor both sides? Because I can tell from you, you're not about just trying to make yourself good and make it good for you. You want to make sure it's favorable for both sides. So how are you going about that negotiation process overall?
I mean, for me, really, the negotiation process, I've got to get through some parts of the due diligence before any of that can take place. I've got to get far enough down the line to commit to myself that this is what I want to do, that I want to try to buy this company. And, once I figure that out, then it goes to, once I figure out that the person is a good person, the business is a good business, then most of the time it's about the numbers. For me, it's about, this is where I need to be. Where are you at? How do we get to a happy medium in the middle where everyone's happy? Because like I told you, most of these businesses I buy, the owner's going to stay on with me 6 months I got some of them that's been on 4 or 5 years. They don't like business stuff. They like doing what they do. They just didn't like business stuff. But for me, it's got to be a win-win, because, at the end of the day, they don't have to lose for me to win, and I don't have to lose for them to win. If it's not a win-win for everyone, and we can't make it a win-win for everyone, I'm not interested, man, because there's so many deals out there. But I mean, you see on TV this, hard pressure, back and forth stuff. If it's got to be that way, it's just not a deal for me. It's going to take too much effort, and somebody's going to lose in the end. And I'm just not in for one of those type deals. For me, the negotiation table is more like, hey, I know you got something good. I want to carry on your legacy. What can we do to work together, or work through the transition where your customers stay on? I'm able to continue what you've grown. How does that work out? The numbers part, for me, numbers, it's the numbers just have to make sense. And I'm normally going to the negotiation table with, I'm super good with numbers. I know what my bottom line is, what the most I can pay for it is. And, for me, I'm normally just going to throw that out there to start with. Hey, this is me. This is where I got to be. You said you were at X. I'm at Y. How do we meet in the middle? How do we get to the number that I need to be at? What kind of creative structure can we put together where everybody wins? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But for me, I'm just not real big on going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, because, at the end of the day, the seller is going to feel like, somebody had to lose in order for somebody else to win. And for me, it's just not, it's not where I want to be. I want it to be a win-win for everybody there.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And I can tell it kind of goes back to there's plenty of deals out there. So what's the point of really trying to make this work out and this? You can just go find another deal. Why worry about that so much? And so I think that's a important thing, especially if you're on your side of the negotiation table where you're trying to acquire the company. Like, hey, there's plenty of others. Now, you as the business owner, that's a different story. You're trying to sell this business. It's your baby. It can be very difficult because, well, you want to get the most out of it. Especially you mentioned about these older business owners that are, hey, I got one last shot to sell my business, and they're trying to get the most out of it. But just working on that and working through something that works for everybody, I think really is the best way. Because if I sell my business for an extra $1 million, it'll feel good in the moment, but I bet a lot of people that'll kind of eat at them, especially that older generation. I feel it would really kind of eat at them. Man, maybe I shouldn't have done that because I really didn't need that extra $1 million. Or I mean, it's nice to have for sure, but it could have went a lot smoother because I'm sure when that comes up that you stand firm on a negotiation, somebody always feels like crap afterwards, and that's definitely not a way that you want people leaving the negotiation table feeling like.
Right. And, a lot of these deals that I've tried in the past to kind of stick a square peg in a round hole, for lack of better terms, those have been the deals that have turned out to be the worst for me in the long run. If you try to force it and you're trying to push this deal to go through and it seems like everything keeps falling apart, sometimes you better back up and look at this deal and say, hey, why is there's somebody else telling me that I should look at this? Maybe I should back up and see what I'm missing here. And 80 or 90% of the time, if you go through it again, you'll find something you're like, I understand why the deal didn't get done, why it hasn't got done so far.
And why would you say most of the time that is? Obviously, it's not always one way, but most of the time when the negotiation gets delayed, you keep supposedly missing stuff, or it's not closing. What would you say a majority of the time that reason is?
For me, it's a majority of the time is, like when you first get the numbers on a business from a seller. Out of all the deals I've looked at, I can't tell you of one that I looked at the numbers and at the end, at the closing table, the numbers were the same. There's going to be some inflated stuff in there. There's going to be some stuff that they're trying to add back in that's not add backs. Your job is to find that, right? And, for me, when it keeps getting pushed out and deals ultimately don't get done, it's because I found something else in the numbers or in the books or in somewhere that's not what they told me. And if they'll lie to me about that, what else would they lie to me about?
That's a good point, which really goes back to the person at the end of the day, which is a lot of what you talked about on the negotiation table. You're more worried about the people, looking at making sure we're both having a win-win, making sure are the people that are not the business owner going to stay on board, are the people somebody that are good people, that they have a good reputation in their market, in their industry and everything. So really, it sounds like a lot of it just falls back on the person in one way, shape, or form. Yes, the numbers have to be there, but it's also the person behind the numbers that matters a lot.
You're buying what they've grown.
Yeah.
I want to know how they've grown it to where it's at. Right? Yeah. What did they have to do to get there? Was everything above board? Was some stuff not above board? Was all of it not above board? I just, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I'm not the cops. I don't care what they do. I just got to figure out for myself before I go write that check.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, because you're going to be liable for it, especially if it's something super shady and then you bought it and you knew that it was shady and you still went ahead with it. Well, hey, now it's on your shoulders.
Well, there's ways to get around that, if you only do an asset purchase instead of a stock purchase, then you're not buying their liabilities. But, at the end of the day, I just don't want to be associated with folks like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's not me, and I don't want to be around folks like that.
Yeah, so I like this. A negotiation, really, at the end of the day, it comes down to the people, and then can you solve a problem, and do you want to solve a problem? Are really the two big things that you need to ask yourself, I guess, the three things. So the two things being the problem. Can you solve it? Do you want to solve it? But then also look at the people, because the people make a big difference in that negotiation. And that's what I found for myself personally, not on an acquisition of businesses perspective, but just any kind of negotiation, one-on-one, one-on-group. It always comes down to the people, and there's always some kind of personnel. They want this just because, and half time it's not even logical why. It's just that's what they want. And so you've got to figure out how to work around that, work around the people and everything. Such an important piece when it comes to negotiation.
Yep.
But
What's their problem, and can you solve it?
Yep. Love it. Plain and simple. Well, if people want to, be able to follow you, Michael, they want to know more about, like, maybe they want to sell a business to you or be able to talk with you. I know you're doing trainings and stuff periodically on this as well. Where's the best place for them to be able to follow you, reach out to you, and be able to learn more, be able to work with you?
You can find me on Facebook, Michael Byars, or I've got a website. You can go to acquisitionceo.com or michaelbyars.com. Either one.
All right, perfect. Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us about the art of negotiation to help us get better at any kind of negotiation, really, at the end of the day, but it's specifically business acquisition negotiation.
You're welcome. Like I said, I really appreciate the opportunity, Philip. Thank you.
Of course.